Hello, and welcome to Napflix. Tonight, we are going to explore 100 fascinating facts about flowers. Not the ones sitting quietly in a vase on your table. The real ones. The ones that wage chemical warfare against their neighbors. That crash entire economies. That produce cyanide, generate their own body heat, and seduce wasps into mating with their petals. From the battlefields of Flanders to the temples of ancient Egypt, from a bloom smaller than a grain of salt to a corpse-scented giant that heats itself to human body temperature, this is the story of the most deceptive, beautiful, and quietly powerful organisms on Earth. You do not need to stay awake for all of it. You do not need to remember any of it. Just let the words carry you. If your eyes grow heavy, let them close. If your mind begins to drift, let it drift. This is your time to rest. And if you enjoy what you hear, a like or subscribe helps others find their way here too. Now, let us begin. Before flowers existed, the land was green and brown and nothing else. For hundreds of millions of years, the continents were carpeted in ferns and conifers and mosses, and the palette of the earth was a muted, unchanging wash of dark greens and dull earth tones. There were no reds, there were no blues, there were no yellows or purples or the soft blush of pink. Then, roughly 130 million years ago, during the Cretaceous period, flowering plants appeared, and they brought color with them. True color. Pigments that no terrestrial organism had ever produced before. Anthocyanins gave the world its first blues and purples. Carotenoids introduced oranges and yellows. Betalains painted the earliest magentas. The arrival of flowers did not just change the biology of the planet, it changed the way the planet looked from space. They painted the earth, petal by petal, and the world has never been the same shade since. Deep in the rainforests of Sumatra, there is a flower that heats itself to the temperature of a living human body. The corpse flower, Amorphophallus titanum, produces an inflorescence that can stand over 3 meters tall, taller than most doorways. And when it blooms, which happens only once every 7 to 10 years, the central spike raises its own temperature to roughly 36 degrees Celsius. It does this to volatilize its scent, to hurl the molecules of its fragrance into the surrounding air with as much force as possible. And that scent is the smell of rotting flesh. Dimethyl trisulfide, the same compound produced by decomposing animal tissue, pours off the bloom in waves that can be detected half a mile away. The heat is the engine, the stench is the signal, and the carrion beetles and flesh flies that come to investigate, expecting a meal, find instead a cathedral of deception that dusts them with pollen and sends them on their way. The entire spectacle lasts roughly 48 hours. Then it collapses, and the plant disappears underground for another decade. There is a spice in your kitchen that is worth more than gold. Saffron comes from a flower, the Crocus sativus, a small purple bloom that produces exactly 3 red stigma threads at its center. Those 3 threads are saffron, and harvesting them is one of the most labor-intensive agricultural processes on Earth. Each flower must be picked by hand. Each set of 3 stigmas must be separated from the bloom with tweezers or careful fingers. It takes roughly 75,000 flowers to produce a single pound of dried saffron, and that pound can sell for over $5,000, which at various points in history has exceeded the spot price of gold. The flowers bloom for only 1 week each autumn. The harvest window is measured in days, and the flavor, that warm, honeyed, slightly metallic taste that colors paella and risotto and Persian rice, comes from a molecule called picrocrosin that exists nowhere else in the commercial spice trade. Every strand of saffron you have ever tasted was pulled from a flower by a human hand. In the meadows of the Mediterranean, there is an orchid that has learned to lie. The Ophrys orchid does not attract pollinators with nectar. It does not lure them with color or fragrance in any conventional sense. Instead, it has evolved a petal that mimics, with extraordinary precision, the body of a female wasp. The shape is right, the texture is right, the fine hairs on the surface are right, and the flower releases a cocktail of chemical compounds that replicate the exact pheromones of a receptive female. A male wasp, detecting these signals, lands on the petal and attempts to mate with it. The deception is so thorough that the wasp may persist for 20 minutes or more, pressing itself against the bloom with genuine urgency. And in doing so, pollen packets attach to its body. When it flies to the next orchid and is fooled again, the pollen transfers. The orchid gets pollinated, the wasp gets nothing. It is one of the most elaborate cons in the natural world, and it has been running successfully for millions of years. In the winter of 1637, a single tulip bulb sold for more than a house. The Netherlands was in the grip of what historians now call tulip mania, the first recorded speculative bubble in economic history. Tulips had arrived in Europe from the Ottoman Empire in the previous century and had become objects of intense desire among the Dutch merchant class. Rare varieties, particularly those with vivid colour breaks caused by a virus that mottled the petals in streaks of red and white, commanded extraordinary prices. At the peak, a single bulb of the Semper Augustus variety, the most coveted of all, traded for 10,000 guilders. That was enough to buy a grand canal-side mansion in Amsterdam, or to pay the annual salary of a skilled craftsman for 25 years. Futures contracts were drawn up. Fortunes were wagered. And then, in February of 1637, the market collapsed. Prices fell by over 90% in a matter of days. Families were ruined. An entire economy was shaken. And at the center of it all was a flower, a tulip. Beautiful, fragile, and worth nothing at all. The moment people stopped believing it was worth everything. A flower can hear a bee coming. In 2019, researchers at Tel Aviv University published a study that changed our understanding of what plants can perceive. They exposed evening primrose flowers to recordings of bee wing vibrations, sounds in the frequency range of 200 to 500 hertz, and measured the response. Within 3 minutes, the flowers increased the sugar concentration of their nectar by up to 20%. The petals themselves were acting as acoustic receivers, vibrating in sympathy with the sound waves the way a drum skin vibrates when sound hits it. The flowers were not responding to wind, they were not responding to random noise. They were responding specifically to the frequency signature of an approaching pollinator and sweetening their reward in real time. A flower with no ears, no brain, and no nervous system was listening to the air and adjusting its chemistry to match what it heard. A young sunflower follows the sun across the sky. From dawn until dusk, the head of the plant tracks the light, turning slowly from east to west as the hours pass. This is heliotropism, and the mechanism is elegant. The stem does not bend toward the sun. Instead, the cells on the shaded side of the stem elongate faster than those on the lit side, pushing the head toward the light through differential growth. At night, the process reverses, and by morning, the flower faces east again, ready for the new day. But this only happens while the sunflower is young and still growing. Once the stem matures and stiffens, the tracking stops and the flower freezes permanently facing east. This is not a failure of the system. It is the final move in a strategy. Researchers at the University of California, Davis discovered that east-facing sunflowers warm up faster in the morning than west-facing ones. and that warmth attracts 5 times as many pollinating bees. The young sunflower chases the light. The mature sunflower faces the dawn. And both choices serve the same purpose. In the forests around Chernobyl, flowers are evolving in real time. The 1986 nuclear disaster left a 30-kilometer exclusion zone around the reactor. And within that zone, the radiation levels in some areas remain high enough to be lethal to humans over prolonged exposure. But the flowers have not left. They have adapted. Studies of plants in the exclusion zone have documented dramatically increased mutation rates. Some species show altered petal colors. Others display unusual shapes and growth patterns not observed anywhere else on Earth. The flowers are not thriving in spite of the radiation. They are responding to it, generation by generation, producing variants that would never have appeared under normal conditions. The exclusion zone has become an accidental laboratory of accelerated evolution, and the flowers growing there are living proof that life does not simply endure catastrophe. It experiments with it. The smallest flower on Earth is invisible without a microscope. Wolfia globosa, a species of duckweed that floats on the surface of still water across tropical Asia, produces a flower that is roughly 0.3 millimeters wide. That is smaller than a grain of table salt. The entire plant, flower included, could pass through the eye of a sewing needle. It has no roots. It has no stem in any meaningful sense. It is a green speck on the surface of a pond, and yet it flowers, it reproduces, and it has been doing so successfully for millions of years. On the other end of the scale, the Rafflesia arnoldi of Borneo can produce a single bloom nearly a meter across that weighs 11 kilograms. The range between the smallest and largest flower on Earth spans a factor of over 3,000. The diversity of flowering plants is not measured in species alone. It is measured in the sheer improbability of their extremes. Every drop of natural vanilla you have ever tasted began with an orchid and a single species of bee. The vanilla orchid, native to Mexico, produces a pale, trumpet-shaped flower that opens for less than a day. In the wild, it can only be pollinated by the Melipona bee, a small, stingless bee found in the tropical forests of Central America. No other insect has the right size and behavior to access the flower's reproductive structures. When European traders transplanted vanilla to Madagascar and other tropical islands in the 19th century, they brought the orchid, but not the bee. The flowers bloomed and withered unpollinated. The problem was solved in 1841 by a 12-year-old enslaved boy named Edmund Albius on the island of Reunion, who invented a technique for hand-pollinating the flowers using a thin stick and his thumb. His method is still used today. Every vanilla bean grown outside of Mexico, which is nearly all of the global supply, is pollinated by a human hand, flower by flower, in a process that must be completed within hours of each bloom opening. Flowers existed alongside dinosaurs for 65 million years. The earliest confirmed flowering plant fossil, a species called Montsechia vidali discovered in limestone deposits in Spain, dates to approximately 130 million years ago, deep in the early Cretaceous period. This means flowering plants were already spreading across the landscape while Iguanodon browsed the forests and Spinosaurus hunted the rivers. For tens of millions of years, the great reptiles walked through meadows of early blossoms, ate the fruits of flowering trees, and lived in a world that was being quietly reshaped by the most successful group of plants the Earth has ever produced. When the asteroid struck 66 million years ago and ended the age of dinosaurs, the flowers survived. They had already spread to every continent. They had already formed partnerships with insects and birds. They were already the dominant plant group on the planet. The dinosaurs are gone. The flowers are still here. In your garden, on your windowsill, in the fields outside. They have outlasted everything. The foxglove gave humanity one of the most important heart medicines in history. In the English countryside of the 1780s, a physician named William Withering heard about a folk remedy being used by a local herbalist. The remedy was a tea brewed from the leaves and flowers of the foxglove, and it was being given to patients with dropsy, a condition we now understand as fluid retention caused by congestive heart failure. Withering investigated systematically, testing preparations on patients over a period of 10 years, and in 1785, he published his findings. The active compound was digitalis, a cardiac glycoside that strengthens the contraction of the heart muscle and slows the heart rate. It was one of the first plant-derived drugs to be studied with anything resembling clinical rigor, and it remained a frontline treatment for heart failure for over 200 years. Versions of it are still prescribed today. Every dose traces its lineage back to a purple bell-shaped flower, growing wild in a hedgerow and a country doctor who paid attention. Some flowers produce cyanide. The blossoms of certain cherry species, wild almond trees, and members of the Prunus genus contain a compound called amygdalin. When the tissue is crushed or chewed, enzymes break amygdalin down into hydrogen cyanide, one of the most rapidly acting poisons known. The bitter almond flower contains enough of this compound to be genuinely lethal if consumed in quantity. The chemistry is a defense mechanism, a warning encoded in bitterness that tells any animal foolish enough to eat the flower that it has made a serious mistake. The sweet scent that drifts from an almond orchard in bloom, that soft, marzipan-like fragrance that most people find pleasant, is produced by the same metabolic pathway that generates the poison. Beauty and lethality wrapped in the same molecule, carried on the same breeze. What looks like a single sunflower is actually thousands of flowers working together. The golden disc at the center of a sunflower head is not a solid surface. It is a composite structure made up of as many as 2,000 tiny individual florets, each one a complete flower in its own right, capable of producing its own seed. These florets are arranged in interlocking spirals that follow the Fibonacci sequence, a mathematical pattern found across nature from seashells to galaxies. The spirals run in two directions, clockwise and anti-clockwise, and the number of spirals in each direction is almost always a pair of consecutive Fibonacci numbers, typically 34 and 55, or 55 and 89. This arrangement is not decorative. It is the most efficient packing pattern possible. It allows the maximum number of seeds to fit into the minimum space, and it ensures that each floret receives equal access to sunlight and pollinators. The beauty of a sunflower is mathematics made visible. 15,000 years ago, someone placed flowers in a grave. In a Natufian burial cave in northern Israel, archaeologists discovered the remains of a human body surrounded by the carefully arranged remnants of sage, mint, and other flowering plants. The burial dates to roughly 13,000 BC, thousands of years before the invention of agriculture, thousands of years before the first cities, before writing, before pottery. These were hunter-gatherers, people living in small bands in the hills above the Jordan Valley. And when one of their own died, they gathered flowers and laid them around the body with deliberate care. It is the oldest known flower arrangement in human history. And it tells us something profound. The impulse to honor the dead with flowers is not a cultural invention. It is not something we learned. It predates civilization itself. It reaches back to a time before almost everything we think of as human society. We have been placing flowers beside the people we have lost for as long as we have been recognizably ourselves. Flowers wage chemical war on their neighbors. The black walnut tree releases a compound called juglone from its flowers, its leaves, its bark, and its roots. Juglone seeps into the surrounding soil and poisons competing plants. Tomatoes planted near a black walnut will wilt and yellow within weeks. Potatoes, azaleas, and blueberries suffer the same fate. The process is called allelopathy, and it is not unique to walnuts. Marigolds release alpha-terphenol from their roots. Sunflowers suppress germination in nearby plants through a suite of chemical compounds washed from their leaves by rain. The garden may look peaceful, but beneath the surface, it is a battlefield. Plants are locked in slow, silent conflict over territory, sunlight, and resources, and flowers are both the weapons and the soldiers. The world's largest flower has no leaves, no stem, and no roots. Rafflesia arnoldi is a parasite that lives entirely inside the body of a tropical vine in the rainforests of Borneo and Sumatra. It has no chlorophyll. It produces no energy of its own. It exists as a network of thread-like filaments woven through the tissues of its host, invisible and undetectable until the moment it blooms. And when it blooms, it produces a single flower that can span nearly a meter across and weigh 11 kilograms. The petals are thick, leathery, and spotted with pale raised bumps that make them look disturbingly like diseased flesh. The smell is the smell of rotting meat. The color is the color of raw liver. Everything about the Rafflesia is designed to attract carrion flies, the only pollinators willing to visit something that looks and smells like death. It is the largest flower on Earth, and it survives by deceiving every organism it encounters, including the vine that feeds it, without ever knowing it is there. The rose on your table is a close relative of the apple in your kitchen. The Rosaceae family, to which all roses belong, is one of the most economically important plant families on the planet. It contains over 4,000 species, and its members include apples, pears, cherries, peaches, plums, apricots, almonds, strawberries, and raspberries. Every time you bite into a peach or scatter raspberries over your breakfast, you are eating the fruit of a plant that shares a common ancestor with the garden rose. The family connection is visible if you know where to look. The five-petaled structure of a wild rose is nearly identical to the blossom of an apple tree. The hips of a rose, those small red fruits that form after the petals fall, are structurally similar to a tiny apple. Roses and apples diverged millions of years ago, but the blueprint is the same. The bouquet and the fruit bowl are family. There is an orchid that lives entirely underground for years at a time. The ghost orchid, Epipodium aphyllum, has no chlorophyll. It cannot photosynthesize. It has no green leaves, no visible stem for most of its life, and no conventional way of feeding itself. Instead, it lives in complete darkness beneath the forest floor, drawing all of its nutrition from a symbiotic relationship with underground fungi. The fungi break down decaying organic matter in the soil and share the resulting nutrients with the orchid, which gives almost nothing in return. The orchid is, in effect, a parasite of a parasite. It may remain underground for a decade or more, invisible, silent, growing slowly through the mycelial network, and then one year, when conditions are right, it sends up a single pale stem bearing a few ghostly white flowers. The bloom lasts days, then the orchid vanishes back into the earth, and the forest floor shows no trace that it was ever there. The poppies of Flanders bloomed because of chemistry, not just poetry. When the First World War churned the fields of Belgium and northern France into a landscape of mud and shell craters, the conditions it created were, by pure biological coincidence, perfect for one particular species. The common poppy, Papaver royus, thrives in disturbed soil. Its seeds can lie dormant for years, waiting for the ground to be broken. The explosions of war broke the ground on an industrial scale. The calcium-rich chalk subsoil of the region was thrown to the surface, raising the pH of the topsoil. The lime used in the burial of soldiers further enriched the calcium content. These are exactly the conditions that poppy seeds require to germinate. The fields of Flanders turned red not because the universe has a sense of metaphor, but because the chemistry of war and the chemistry of poppy germination aligned by accident. The result looked like a memorial. The biology was indifferent. If you plant the same hydrangea in two different soils, it may bloom in two completely different colors. In acidic soil, aluminium ions are soluble and available to the plant. The roots absorb them, they travel to the petals, and they interact with pigment molecules called anthocyanins to produce blue flowers. In alkaline soil, the aluminium is locked in compounds the roots cannot access. Without it, the same anthocyanins produce pink. The same plant, the same genetics, the same variety, two entirely different colors, determined entirely by the chemistry of the ground it grows in. You can shift a hydrangea from pink to blue by adding aluminium sulfate to the soil. You can shift it back by adding lime. The flower is not choosing its color. It is reflecting the invisible chemistry of the earth beneath it, like litmus paper that happens to be beautiful. The lotus flower is the cleanest surface in nature. The petals of the sacred lotus are covered in microscopic waxy bumps, each one roughly 10 to 20 micrometers tall, and each bump is itself coated in even finer wax crystals at the nanometer scale. This two-tiered surface architecture means that water cannot spread across the petal. Instead, it beads into nearly perfect spheres that roll off at the slightest angle, picking up dirt, dust, fungal spores, and bacteria as they go. The lotus cleans itself every time it rains. This property, discovered and named the lotus effect by botanists Wilhelm Barthelot and Christoph Nienhuys in the 1990s, has inspired an entire field of biomimetic engineering. Self-cleaning paints, stain-resistant fabrics, anti-fouling coatings for medical implants, and water-repellent glass all draw on the principle that the lotus solved millions of years ago. A flower that rises from the mud and emerges without a speck of dirt on it. Engineers spent decades trying to replicate what the lotus does by simply growing. In the tombs of ancient Egypt, among the gold and the linen and the carefully preserved organs of the dead, there were flowers. Blue water lilies, Nymphea caerulea, placed with the same reverence as jewelry and sacred texts. The Egyptians did not include them merely for their beauty. The blue lily contains apomorphine and nuciferine, psychoactive alkaloids that produce mild euphoria, relaxation, and a heightened sense of well-being when steeped in wine or consumed directly. The flower appears in Egyptian art with remarkable frequency, held to the nose, floating in wine cups, adorning the heads of revelers and priests alike. It was sacred to Nefertum, the god of perfume, beauty, and healing. And it was, by any modern definition, a recreational drug. The Egyptians placed it in their tombs because they believed the afterlife required the same pleasures as life itself. And among those pleasures, alongside food and music and companionship, was a small blue flower that altered your mind and made the world feel gentle. In the rainforests of Borneo, there is a flower that works like a hotel and a prison at the same time. Several species related to Rafflesia, including the genus Rhizanthes, produce blooms that lure dung beetles inside using the smell of decaying matter. Once inside, the beetle finds a chamber lined with smooth, waxy walls that it cannot climb. The exits are narrowed or angled inward, making escape difficult. The beetle is trapped, but not harmed. Over the course of roughly 24 hours, the beetle moves around the chamber, brushing against pollen-covered surfaces that coat it thoroughly. Then the flower relaxes. The walls change, the exits widen, and the beetle crawls free, carrying a full load of pollen that it will deposit in the next bloom that fools it with the same trick. The flower offers no reward. It provides no food. It simply detains its visitor long enough to complete a transaction and then releases it, covered in evidence of where it has been. Once every 12 years, the mountains of southern India turn purple. The Neelakurinji, Strobilanthes kunthiana, is a shrub that blooms only once every 12 years, then dies. During a blooming year, entire hillsides in the Western Ghats erupt in waves of blue-violet flowers, so dense and so vivid that the landscape is transformed. The most recent bloom, in 2018, covered thousands of hectares across Kerala and Tamil Nadu, and the spectacle was visible in satellite imagery from space. For the Muthuvan and Paliyan tribes who live in these hills, the bloom has served as a calendar for generations, marking time in 12-year cycles that predate written records in the region. Then every plant dies, seeds fall, and the hills return to green. The next generation of Neelakurinji is already growing in the soil, counting the years in some internal rhythm that science still does not fully understand, waiting for 2030 to paint the mountains again. Bees do not see flowers the way you do. They see them better. The compound eyes of a honeybee can detect ultraviolet light, a part of the electromagnetic spectrum that is completely invisible to humans. And many flowers have evolved to exploit this. A buttercup that looks like a simple yellow disc to your eyes is, to a bee, a vivid target with a dark ultraviolet bullseye at its center. A white daisy that appears plain and uniform to you blazes with bold UV stripes that point like runway lights straight toward the nectar. These patterns are called nectar guides, and they are everywhere. Most flowering plants produce them. You have walked past them your entire life without seeing them. But every bee that has ever visited your garden has read them instantly, following a visual language written in a spectrum that humans were not built to perceive. The garden you know is only half the garden that exists. The other half is painted in colors you will never see. There is no such thing as a truly black rose. No rose, in any variety, in any soil, under any conditions, produces a pigment that is genuinely black. The darkest roses in the world, most famously those grown in the town of Halfeti in southeastern Turkey, achieve their near-black appearance through an unusually high concentration of anthocyanin pigments, combined with the specific pH of the local groundwater and the alkaline soil of the Euphrates Valley. In direct sunlight, even these reveal themselves as a very deep crimson. The quest for a true black rose has occupied breeders for centuries. It is, for now, genetically impossible. The pigment chemistry of roses simply does not extend to black. Every dark rose you have ever seen was red, pretending. Ancient Romans threw roses at their problems and at their parties. The Roman Empire consumed roses on an almost industrial scale. Petals were scattered on banquet floors, floated in wine cups, pressed into garlands, and dropped from ceilings onto reclining guests. The Emperor Nero, whose appetite for Extravagance was legendary, even by Roman standards, reportedly spent the equivalent of $200,000 on rose petals for a single evening's entertainment. Roses were strewn across beds, packed into pillows, and used to mask the less pleasant smells of Roman social life. Roman brides wore rose garlands. Roman soldiers were welcomed home with rose petals. And when the supply of Italian roses ran short, which it frequently did, the Romans imported them by the shipload from Egypt, where vast farms along the Nile grew roses exclusively for Roman export. The cut flower trade is not a modern invention. It is 2,000 years old, and it started with roses. A single dandelion can launch 15,000 paratroopers. Each dandelion head produces up to 15,000 seeds, and each seed is attached to a structure called a pappus, a filament-thin stalk topped with a disc of feathery bristles that catches the air like a parachute. But it is not quite a parachute. In 2018, researchers at the University of Edinburgh discovered that the pappus works by generating a vortex of low-pressure air above itself, a stable, donut-shaped ring of turbulence that keeps the seed aloft far longer than a solid surface of the same size would. The design is more aerodynamically efficient than anything engineers had produced at that scale. Dandelion seeds can travel over 100 kilometers on a strong wind. They grow on every continent except Antarctica. They germinate in pavement cracks, in gravel, in lawns that have been treated with herbicide. The dandelion is not a weed. It is one of the most successful dispersal systems in the history of terrestrial life, and it begins with a flower so common that most people do not even notice it. The oldest living rosebush survived the bombing of its own cathedral. The Tausendjährige Rosenstock, the thousand-year rose, grows against the wall of Hildesheim Cathedral in northern Germany. It has been documented since at least 815 AD, making it over 1,200 years old. In March 1945, Allied bombing destroyed the cathedral. The building collapsed. The rose was buried under rubble, its canes broken, its roots exposed to fire and debris. It was assumed dead. But within weeks of the bombing, new shoots emerged from the root system, pushing up through the wreckage. The rose was replanted against the rebuilt cathedral wall, where it grows today, climbing over 10 meters high and producing pale pink blossoms every spring. It has outlasted the Holy Roman Empire, both world wars and the building it was planted beside. The cathedral was rebuilt. The rose simply continued. Without one nearly invisible fly, there would be no chocolate. The cacao tree, Theobroma cacao, produces small, pale, complicated flowers that grow directly from the trunk and major branches. The flowers are so structurally intricate that most insects cannot physically access the reproductive parts. The only creatures small and agile enough to pollinate them are midges from the family Ceratopogonidae, flies so tiny they are barely visible to the naked eye. These midges crawl into the flower's convoluted chambers, pick up pollen, and carry it to the next bloom. Without them, the cacao tree cannot produce the pods that contain cocoa beans. Every bar of chocolate, every cup of cocoa, every mocha and truffle and brownie depends on a pollination event performed by a fly the size of a pinhead. The global chocolate industry is worth over $130 billion a year. It rests on the wings of an insect most people have never seen and could not name. The cherry blossoms of Kyoto have been keeping a record for 1,200 years. Japanese court diaries, temple records, and imperial chronicles have documented the date of peak cherry blossom bloom in Kyoto almost continuously since the 9th century. It is the longest continuous phenological dataset on Earth, and it is telling a story. Over the past century, the average bloom date has shifted roughly 10 days earlier. Blossoms that once peaked in mid-April now peak in early April or even late March. The cause is rising urban and global temperatures. Cherry blossoms are exquisitely sensitive to the accumulated warmth of late winter and early spring. Even small changes in average temperature shift the bloom forward. 1,200 years of data recorded by monks and courtiers and poets now serves as one of the clearest biological indicators of climate change on the planet. The cherry blossom was always a symbol of impermanence. It is becoming a measure of it. The same plant family that gives you tomatoes and potatoes also gives you one of the deadliest flowers in Europe. The Solanaceae, the nightshade family, is a study in contradictions. It includes the tomato, the potato, the bell pepper, the chili, the aubergine, and tobacco. Crops that feed or stimulate billions of people every day. And it includes Atropa belladonna, deadly nightshade, whose berries and flowers contain atropine and scopolamine in concentrations sufficient to kill an adult human. The name belladonna, meaning beautiful woman, comes from the Renaissance practice of women dropping the plant's extract into their eyes to dilate their pupils, which was considered attractive. The dilation is caused by atropine paralyzing the muscles of the iris. The same compound is still used by ophthalmologists today. The nightshade family feeds the world with one hand and poisons it with the other. And the flowers of both the tomato and the deadly nightshade look remarkably, almost insultingly, alike. A single bee orchid can hold a male bee captive in an illusion for 20 minutes. The bee orchid, Ophrys epiphyra, takes the mimicry strategy even further than its wasp-targeting relatives. Its labellum, the broad lower petal, replicates not just the general outline of a female bee, but the texture of her fur, the gloss of her wings, and the specific arrangement of hairs on her abdomen. The orchid also releases a blend of volatile compounds that mimics the exact chemical signature a female bee would produce when she's ready to mate. A male bee arriving at full speed lands on the petal and begins what he believes is copulation. He may remain for 20 minutes, adjusting his position, responding to the texture, entirely convinced. During this time, pollinia, the sticky packets of pollen the orchid produces, attach to his head. When he finally leaves and visits the next orchid, the pollinia contact the stigma. The flower reproduces. The bee has been used thoroughly and completely, and has received nothing in return. When the medical supplies ran out in the trenches of the First World War, some medics reached for lavender. Lavandula angustifolia had been used in folk medicine for centuries, but it found a grim new purpose in the field hospitals of 1914 to 1918. Lavender oil was applied to wounds when antiseptic solutions were unavailable. The essential oil contains linalool and linaloyl acetate, compounds that have since been verified in clinical research to possess antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties. The French chemist René Maurice Gattefossé, who is credited with coining the term aromatherapy, became interested in lavender's medicinal potential after burning his hand in a laboratory accident and finding that lavender oil accelerated the healing. His research, published in 1937, helped establish the scientific study of essential oils. A flower that most people associate with soap and sachets had already proved itself useful in one of the most desperate medical environments in history. The number of petals on almost every flower follows a mathematical sequence that appears across the universe. The Fibonacci sequence, in which each number is the sum of the two before it, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, 121, 122, 1 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, governs the architecture of flowers with remarkable consistency. Lilies have 3 petals. Buttercups have 5. Delphiniums have 8. Marigolds have 13. Asters have 21. Many daisies have 34 or 55. The reason is not mystical, it is mechanical. As a flower bud develops, new petals form at the growth point in a spiral pattern. The angle between each successive petal, roughly 137.5 degrees, is the golden angle, derived from the golden ratio, and it produces Fibonacci spirals as a natural consequence of efficient packing. The flower is not counting, it is growing. And growth, when governed by the simplest rules of geometry, produces the same numbers that appear in galaxies, hurricanes, and the chambers of a nautilus shell. There is a flower in South Africa that needs fire the way most flowers need rain. The fire lily, Certanthus ventricosus, blooms within days of a brush fire sweeping through its habitat. The plant survives the blaze underground, its bulb insulated by the soil, and when the fire passes, it responds to the chemical signature of smoke with explosive speed. A flowering stalk rises from the scorched earth, producing bright red blooms in a landscape that is still black with ash. The timing is precise. The ash-enriched, competitor-free soil provides ideal growing conditions. The pollinators, drawn to the only colour in a burnt landscape, have no other options and visit the fire lily with extraordinary frequency. The plant does not merely tolerate fire, it depends on it. Without periodic burning, the fire lily declines, crowded out by the vegetation that fire would normally remove. It is a flower whose survival strategy is built on destruction, and it has been waiting underground for the flames. Carl Linnaeus believed you could tell the time by looking at a garden. In 1751, the Swedish botanist proposed a flower clock, a garden planted in a circle with different species in each segment, each one opening or closing at a specific hour of the day. Morning glories open at dawn, poppies close by early afternoon. 4 o'clocks open, true to their name, at roughly 4 in the afternoon. Night-blooming jasmine unfurls at dusk. Linnaeus mapped dozens of species to specific times and argued that a well-planted garden could serve as a functional clock throughout the daylight hours. The principle is real. Flowers do keep time. Their internal circadian rhythms, governed by networks of genes and proteins that respond to light and temperature, regulate the opening and closing of petals with measurable precision. Linnaeus's clock was never successfully built in its entirety because local conditions shift the timing slightly from one latitude to another. But the idea was sound. The garden knows what time it is. Mistletoe, the symbol of Christmas kissing, is a killer. Despite its festive associations, mistletoe is a hemiparasite. Its seeds are deposited on tree branches by birds, and when they germinate, they send out modified roots called haustoria that penetrate the bark of the host tree and tap directly into its vascular system. The mistletoe draws water and dissolved minerals from the host, weakening it over time. A single mistletoe plant is rarely fatal, but heavy infestations with dozens of clumps growing on a single tree can starve the host of resources, reduce its ability to photosynthesize, and eventually kill it. The branches beneath a large mistletoe clump often die first, creating the dead zones that arborists call witches' brooms. The tradition of kissing under the mistletoe may date to Norse mythology, in which the plant was associated with the goddess of love. The plant itself is associated with something far less romantic. It is an organism that survives by slowly draining the life from another. The Victorians could say things with flowers that they could not say with words. In an era when direct emotional expression was considered inappropriate, particularly between men and women who were not married, the language of flowers, known as floriography, became a sophisticated system of coded communication. Entire dictionaries were published assigning meanings to specific blooms. A red rose meant passionate love, a yellow rose meant jealousy, a striped carnation meant refusal, a purple hyacinth meant sorrow, a sprig of rosemary meant remembrance. An upside-down flower reversed its meaning entirely. A bouquet was not simply beautiful, it was a letter arranged petal by petal, and the recipient was expected to decode it. Misreadings were common and sometimes catastrophic. A well-meaning suitor who sent yellow roses thinking they meant friendship could inadvertently accuse his beloved of infidelity. The language of flowers was elegant, fragile, and easy to get wrong, which made it, in retrospect, a perfect metaphor for Victorian romance itself. Caffeine in flower nectar is not an accident. It is a drug designed to create loyal customers. In 2013, a study published in the journal Science revealed that several plant species, including certain citrus flowers and coffee relatives, produce low levels of caffeine in their nectar. The researchers found that bees that consumed caffeinated nectar were 3 times more likely to remember the scent of that flower after 24 hours than bees that consumed uncaffeinated nectar of the same sugar concentration. The caffeine was enhancing the bee's long-term memory, making the flower more memorable, more likely to be revisited, more likely to receive repeat pollination. The plant was not offering a better reward. It was offering the same reward spiked with a compound that made the bee think it was better. It is, by any reasonable definition, a manipulation strategy. The flower drugs its pollinators just enough to keep them coming back, and the bees never know the difference. The most expensive flower ever sold cost $200,000 and took 8 years to create. The Shenzhen Nongke orchid is not a species found in nature. It is an artificial hybrid bred over 8 years by researchers at Shenzhen Nongke University in China, cultivated under precisely controlled laboratory conditions and designed to bloom once every 4 to 5 years. In 2005, a single specimen sold at auction for 1.68 million yuan, roughly $200,000. The buyer's identity was not disclosed. The orchid itself is pale, elegant, and by most accounts not dramatically more beautiful than orchids that sell for a few pounds at a garden centre. Its value lay in its rarity, its pedigree, and the sheer investment of time and expertise required to produce it. 8 years of breeding, a single plant, $250,000. A flower, in the end, is worth exactly what someone is willing to pay for it. Chamomile has been medicine for 5,000 years and counting. Sumerian clay tablets from roughly 3000 BC contain references to chamomile preparations used for fever and digestive complaints. The ancient Egyptians dedicated the flower to their sun god, Ra, and used it to treat ailments ranging from skin irritation to anxiety. The Greeks called it ground apple because of the faint, apple-like scent of the blossoms. And modern chemistry has confirmed what 5 millennia of herbalists already knew. Chamomile contains bisabolol, an anti-inflammatory compound that reduces redness and swelling, and chamazoline, which gives chamomile oil its distinctive blue color and has verified antispasmodic properties. Apigenin, a flavonoid found in chamomile, binds to the same receptors in the brain as benzodiazepine drugs, producing a mild sedative and anxiolytic effect. The cup of chamomile tea you drink before bed is not a placebo. It is a 5,000-year-old prescription, and the science supports it. When a snapdragon flower dies, it leaves behind a skull. The seed pod of Antirrhinum majus, the common snapdragon, dries after the petals fall into a hard, brown capsule that bears an uncanny resemblance to a miniature human skull. The eye sockets, the nasal cavity, the jaw. The likeness is close enough to be genuinely unsettling when you see it for the first time. In medieval Europe, this transformation was not considered a coincidence. It was considered a sign. Dried snapdragon pods were carried as protective talismans, believed to ward off curses and witchcraft. The plant was associated with deception and concealment, partly because the living flower looks like an open mouth that snaps shut when squeezed from the sides, and partly because the dead flower reveals something that the living one kept hidden. A cheerful garden bloom that, in death, shows you a face. It is the kind of detail that makes you understand why medieval people believed plants had souls. Flowers carry an electrical charge, and bees can read it. In 2013, researchers at the University of Bristol demonstrated that flowers maintain a slight negative electrical charge, while bees, through the friction of flight, accumulate a positive charge. When a bee lands on a flower, charge transfers between the two, and the flower's electrical field changes. This change persists for several minutes, effectively broadcasting to the next approaching bee that the flower has recently been visited and may have less nectar available. The bees detect these electrical shifts through the fine hairs on their bodies, which deflect in response to electric fields. The flower is not simply sitting there, waiting. It is transmitting information through an invisible electrical signal that operates alongside color, scent, and shape. A layer of communication that humans had no idea existed until a decade ago, and that bees have been reading fluently for millions of years. The Crystal Palace, one of the most celebrated buildings of the 19th century, was designed by a man who studied a lily pad. Joseph Paxton was not an architect. He was a gardener. And in the late 1840s, he was cultivating the giant water lily, Victoria amazonica, at Chatsworth House in Derbyshire. The lily pads fascinated him. They could grow to over 2 meters in diameter, and their undersides were reinforced with a network of radial ribs and cross braces that distributed weight across the entire surface with extraordinary efficiency. Paxton placed his young daughter on a pad to demonstrate its strength. She stood on it without it sinking. When Paxton was commissioned to design the hall for the Great Exhibition of 1851, he modelled the iron and glass ribbing of the Crystal Palace directly on the structural principles of the lily pad. The building, which covered 19 acres of Hyde Park, was assembled in just 9 months and was considered an engineering marvel. Its blueprint was a leaf. Its architect was a man who spent his life looking very carefully at flowers. The ghost orchid of Florida has no leaves and was presumed extinct for 2 decades. Dendrophylax lindeni is one of the rarest and most elusive flowers in North America. It grows in the deep swamps of southern Florida, clinging to the bark of cypress and pop ash trees, and it has no leaves at all. Its flat, greenish roots perform photosynthesis, absorbing sunlight through a thin layer of chlorophyll embedded in the root tissue. The plant is almost invisible against the bark, a tangle of roots that looks like nothing in particular until it blooms. The flower is white, ghostly, with elongated petals that trail downward like streamers, and it can only be pollinated by the giant sphinx moth, an insect with a proboscis long enough to reach the nectar spur. After decades without a confirmed sighting, the ghost orchid was rediscovered in the Everglades in the late 20th century, clinging to a tree in a flooded cypress strand. It had been there the entire time. It simply had not chosen to show itself. In Japan, there is a word for the beauty of things that do not last, and cherry blossoms are its purest symbol. Mono no aware, sometimes translated as the pathos of things, is a philosophical and aesthetic concept that finds beauty not in permanence, but in transience. The cherry blossom, which blooms in overwhelming profusion for roughly 1 week before the petals fall, became the central expression of this idea. Hanami, the practice of gathering beneath cherry trees to watch the blossoms, has been a cultural ritual in Japan for over 1,000 years. Families spread blankets beneath the trees. Friends share food and drink. The falling petals are not mourned. They are celebrated because their falling is what makes them beautiful. A blossom that lasted forever would not move anyone. It is the brevity that creates the meaning. The Japanese saw in the cherry blossom what most cultures try to deny, that the things we love are beautiful precisely because they end. And they built a civilization that celebrates that truth every spring. In the Mojave Desert, there are seeds that have been waiting for rain for half a century. The desert evening primrose, Oenothera deltoides, produces seeds encased in a hard coat, impregnated with chemical germination inhibitors. These inhibitors dissolve only when exposed to sufficient water. Not dew, not mist, not a brief shower. Enough water to soak the soil deeply enough to sustain a growing plant through its entire reproductive cycle. In the laboratory, seeds of desert-adapted species have been germinated after 50 years of dormancy, and there is evidence that some can survive far longer. They sit beneath the sand, inert, unchanged for decades, while the world above them bakes and cracks and empties. And then, the rain comes. A storm, heavy and rare, drenches the desert floor. The inhibitors dissolve, the coats crack open. And within days, the desert blooms. Entire landscapes that looked dead erupt into fields of white and yellow and purple, a spectacle called a superbloom that draws visitors from hundreds of miles away. Every flower in that field germinated from a seed that spent years, perhaps decades, doing nothing at all except waiting for this exact moment. The bird of paradise flower is pollinated by an animal standing on it. Strelitzia reginae, native to South Africa, does not rely on wind or on the delicate touch of a hovering insect. It relies on weight. The flower has a rigid canoe-shaped structure made of fused blue petals that forms a sealed sheath. When a sunbird lands on this sheath to drink nectar from the base of the bloom, its body weight forces the petals apart, exposing the stamens hidden inside. Pollen coats the bird's feet and chest. When it flies to the next flower and lands again, the same mechanism opens and the pollen transfers to the stigma. The entire system is gravity activated. No wind required, no hovering required. Just a bird heavy enough to trigger the mechanism standing on a flower that was engineered over millions of years to open only under the right amount of pressure. It is a lock that can only be opened by a specific key, and the key is the weight of a bird. Cleopatra once filled an entire room with rose petals to seduce a Roman general. Ancient sources, including Plutarch and Athenaeus, describe Cleopatra preparing her chambers for Mark Antony by covering the floors with rose petals to a reported depth of roughly 18 inches. The fragrance would have been overwhelming. The visual impact, walking into a room ankle-deep in soft crimson and pink, would have been theatrical in a way that few modern gestures can match. But the display was not romantic whimsy. It was statecraft. Rose petals were extraordinarily expensive in the ancient world, imported from specialist farms and available only in vast quantities to those with the wealth of nations at their disposal. The depth of those petals on the floor was a message. It said without words that the woman waiting in this room commanded resources that could not be measured and should not be underestimated. The roses were not a gift. They were a demonstration of power, scented and beautiful and calculated to the last petal. Flowers growing near highways are evolving to pollinate themselves. In 2020, a study published in the journal New Phytologist documented a striking shift in the floral biology of plants growing in urban and roadside environments where pollinator populations had declined. The flowers were becoming smaller. Their petals were less colorful. They produced less nectar and less scent. And they were developing a significantly greater capacity for self-pollination, the ability to fertilize their own ovules without the help of any external agent. The changes were measurable within just a few decades, not thousands of years, not hundreds, decades. In areas where bees and butterflies had been reduced by habitat loss, pesticide exposure, and vehicle collisions, the flowers were quietly abandoning the partnership. They were evolving to do the job alone. It is adaptation in real time, and it carries an uncomfortable implication. The flowers are not waiting for the pollinators to come back. They are moving on. The global cut flower industry is worth over $100 billion a year, and its heart beats in the Netherlands. The Aalsmeer Flower Auction, located near Amsterdam, is the largest commercial flower market on the planet. Every day, roughly 20 million flowers pass through its trading floors, arriving by refrigerated truck and cargo jet from Colombia, Kenya, Ecuador, Ethiopia, and dozens of other countries. The auction building itself covers over 500,000 square meters, making it one of the largest commercial structures in the world. Buyers bid on lots using a descending clock auction system in which the price starts high and drops until someone presses a button. The entire transaction, from the moment a lot appears on screen to the moment it is sold, can take less than 4 seconds. Roses grown in Kenyan highlands, chrysanthemums from Colombian valleys, and tulips from Dutch greenhouses are bought, packed, and shipped to florists across Europe within 24 hours of cutting. The flowers on your table moved faster from farm to vase than most of the food in your fridge. If you have ever tried to brush lily pollen off your shirt, you know it does not come off. There is a reason for this, and the reason has barbs. Lily pollen grains are covered in microscopic hook-like projections called echini, tiny spines designed by evolution to cling to the bodies of pollinators with tenacious grip. These hooks catch on the fine scales of moth wings, the hairs of bee legs, and the fibers of your clothing with equal effectiveness. Rubbing the pollen only drives the hooks deeper into the fabric, spreading the stain and embedding the bright orange or yellow pigment further. The correct method, as florists and dry cleaners will tell you, is to lift the pollen away with adhesive tape without pressing it into the surface. The stain is not a design flaw in your shirt. It is a design feature of the flower, a delivery system engineered to attach pollen to anything it touches and refuse to let go. After the Fukushima nuclear disaster, millions of sunflowers were planted to clean the soil. In 2011, following the catastrophic meltdown at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, fields across the contaminated zone were sown with sunflowers. The reason was not symbolic, though the sight of golden flowers rising from irradiated ground carried an obvious emotional weight. The reason was chemical. Sunflower roots are hyperaccumulators. They absorb heavy metals and radioactive isotopes from the soil, drawing cesium-137 and strontium-90 into their tissues with remarkable efficiency. The The process is called phytoremediation, and sunflowers are among the best plants on Earth at performing it. The same technique had been used after the Chernobyl disaster in 1986, where sunflowers were planted in contaminated ponds to absorb radioactive material from the water. The plants concentrate the isotopes in their biomass. The biomass is then harvested and disposed of as radioactive waste, leaving the soil measurably cleaner. A flower that follows the sun is also, it turns out, one of the most effective tools for cleaning up the consequences of splitting the atom. A flower's perfume is not constant. It peaks at exactly the moment the flower needs it most. Most flowering plants do not release scent evenly throughout the day. They concentrate their fragrance production in the hours immediately before their pollen matures, or their stigma becomes receptive, the precise window when a visiting pollinator would be most useful. A flower that is pollinated by morning bees peaks its scent at dawn. A flower that depends on twilight moths releases its strongest fragrance at dusk. The timing is governed by circadian gene networks inside the flower's cells, the same type of molecular clock that governs sleep and wakefulness in animals. The flower is not simply emitting perfume, it is scheduling it, directing its chemical energy toward the hours when the return on investment is highest. Every breath of floral scent you have ever noticed in a garden was timed. You were smelling a signal that was designed to arrive at that precise moment. The chrysanthemum is a funeral flower in Europe and a symbol of the emperor in Japan. In France, Italy, Spain, and much of Eastern Europe, chrysanthemums are placed exclusively on graves. They are associated with mourning, remembrance, and the honoring of the dead. To give chrysanthemums as a gift in these countries is a serious social error, the equivalent of sending funeral wreaths to a birthday party. In Japan, the same flower carries the opposite meaning. The chrysanthemum is the personal emblem of the emperor. The chrysanthemum throne is the name given to the position of the Japanese monarch, and it is the oldest continuing hereditary monarchy on Earth. The flower appears on the Japanese passport, on the imperial seal, and in the formal regalia of the state. A single species carrying two completely contradictory meanings on opposite sides of the world. Death in one culture and supreme authority in another. The flower does not change. The humans looking at it do. Some alpine flowers manufacture their own antifreeze. High in the mountains where temperatures plummet below freezing even during the growing season, certain flowering plants produce proteins that function in a way remarkably similar to the antifreeze compounds found in Arctic fish. The edelweiss, Leontopodium alpinum, is among them. These antifreeze proteins bind to the surfaces of tiny ice crystals as they begin to form inside the plant's cells and physically prevent the crystals from growing. Without this intervention, ice would expand through the cell walls, rupturing the membranes and killing the tissue. The proteins hold the ice in check, keeping it at a size that the cell can tolerate, maintaining the fluidity of the internal environment at temperatures that would freeze an unprotected plant solid. The edelweiss, famously the flower of the high Alps, the flower that hikers risk cliff edges to collect, survives at altitudes above 3,000 meters in part because it carries a molecular defense against cold that humans have only recently learned to synthesize in a laboratory. Marigolds are planted around crops on 4 continents as a living pesticide. The roots of Tagetes species, the common marigolds found in garden centers everywhere, release a compound called alpha-terthionyl into the surrounding soil. This compound is toxic to root knot nematodes, microscopic worms that attack the root systems of vegetable crops and cause billions of dollars in agricultural damage globally each year. Marigold roots also deter whiteflies and some aphid species through volatile chemicals released from the leaves and flowers. Farmers across India, sub-Saharan Africa, Central America, and parts of southern Europe use marigold borders as a pesticide-free defense system, planting rings of bright orange flowers around fields of tomatoes, beans, and peppers. The practice is called companion planting, and it is among the oldest agricultural techniques still in active use. The marigold is not just decorative. It is a bodyguard standing watch at the edge of the field, poisoning the soil beneath it just enough to keep the enemy out. Spanish missionaries saw the crucifixion of Christ in the structure of a flower. When Catholic missionaries arrived in South America in the 16th century, they encountered a climbing vine with an elaborate, multi-layered bloom that they had never seen before. They named it the passion flower, passiflora, not because of any association with romantic passion, but because they believed its structure represented the passion of Christ. The 10 petals and sepals represented the 10 faithful apostles, excluding Judas and Peter. The ring of filaments at the center, called the corona, symbolized the crown of thorns. The 5 stamens were the 5 wounds of Christ. The 3 stigma represented the 3 nails. And the tendrils of the vine were the whips used during the flagellation. The missionaries used the flower as a teaching tool, carrying it into indigenous communities as visual evidence that God had inscribed the story of the crucifixion into the natural world of the Americas, waiting to be discovered. The theology was creative. The botany is genuinely extraordinary. And the flower, indifferent to its symbolic burden, continues to bloom across the tropics, as it has for millions of years. A single orchid seed pod can contain over 3 million seeds, and not one of them can grow alone. Orchid seeds are among the smallest in the plant kingdom, so tiny that they are essentially dust. A single seed weighs as little as 1/1,000,000th of a gram. They contain no nutrient reserves, no stored food, no endosperm to fuel the first days of growth. An orchid seed that lands on soil without the right partner will simply die. The partner it needs is a fungus, specifically a mycorrhizal fungus that will colonize the seed, penetrate its outer coat, and feed it with sugars and minerals drawn from decomposing organic matter in the soil. The orchid cannot germinate without this relationship. It cannot grow its first root, its first leaf, its first anything, without the fungus providing the energy that the seed itself does not contain. This is why orchids produce millions of seeds. The odds of any single one landing in the right place, at the right time, beside the right fungal partner, are extraordinarily low. The strategy is not precision, it is volume. 3 million lottery tickets scattered on the wind. Wisteria can live for 2 centuries and tear apart the building it grows on. The oldest known wisteria vine, planted in 1820 at a private residence in Sierra Madre, California, now covers more than an acre. It is estimated to weigh over 250 tons. Its trunk has a circumference of nearly 3 meters, and it produces roughly 1.5 million blossoms each spring, creating a cascade of pale purple flowers so heavy and so dense that the structure supporting it has been reinforced multiple times to prevent collapse. Wisteria grows by twining, wrapping its stems around any available support and tightening its grip as the wood thickens. Over years, this grip can bend iron railings, collapse wooden pergolas, force apart stone walls, and crack masonry. The plant does not intend to destroy. It simply grows, relentlessly, with a strength that most people do not associate with something that produces flowers, the color of lavender, and smells like honey on a spring afternoon. beauty and structural demolition, delivered by the same vine. Jasmine tea was invented by layering flowers over tea leaves and waiting for the scent to transfer. During the Song dynasty in China, roughly 800 years ago, tea masters developed a technique for infusing green tea with the fragrance of jasmine blossoms. Fresh jasmine flowers, harvested in the afternoon when their scent glands are most active, were spread in thin layers over beds of dried tea leaves. The flowers released their essential oils overnight, and the volatile compounds were absorbed by the tea. In the morning, the spent flowers were removed and replaced with fresh ones. The process was repeated as many as 7 times for the highest grades of jasmine tea. No heat was applied, no extracts were added. The scent transferred through proximity alone, molecule by molecule, from petal to leaf, through nothing more than the slow migration of fragrance through still air. The technique, called scenting, is still used in the production of premium jasmine teas today. 8 centuries of tradition, and the method has not changed, because there is no better way to teach a leaf to smell like a flower than to let them spend the night together. There is a flower in the American Southwest that smells like dark chocolate. Berlandiera lirata, commonly known as the chocolate flower, is a small, yellow, daisy-like bloom native to the dry grasslands of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. Its fragrance, strongest in the early morning hours and fading by midday, is strikingly similar to dark chocolate. The scent is produced by a suite of volatile organic compounds, several of which overlap with the aromatic profile of roasted cacao. The resemblance is close enough that people encountering the flower for the first time frequently describe it as smelling exactly like a chocolate bar. The plant uses this scent to attract pollinators, though it is unclear whether the insects perceive it in the same way humans do. What is clear is that the chemistry of a desert wildflower and the chemistry of a tropical bean, separated by thousands of miles and entirely unrelated evolutionary histories, converged on a remarkably similar blend of aromatic molecules. The desert smells like chocolate at dawn, and the flower responsible looks nothing like what you would expect. Pitcher plants grow their flowers as far from their traps as physically possible to avoid killing their own pollinators. This is one of the most elegant compromises. In the plant kingdom, Nepenthes species, the tropical pitcher plants of Southeast Asia, are carnivores. Their modified leaves form deep, slippery walled cups filled with digestive fluid that drown and dissolve insects. But the same insects that fall into the pitchers are closely related to the insects that pollinate the flowers. The plant needs to eat some of them and mate with others. Its solution is architecture. The flowers are produced on tall stalks that rise far above the pitchers, sometimes by a meter or more, physically separating the killing zone from the reproductive zone. A pollinator visiting the flowers at the top of the stalk is in no danger. An insect investigating the pitchers below will not encounter the flowers. The plant has built a wall between its dining room and its bedroom, and the wall is made of distance. True blue is the rarest color in the flower kingdom, and scientists spent decades trying to create it. Most flowers that appear blue to the human eye are actually producing violet or purple pigments and manipulating the light through structural tricks and pH adjustments to appear blue. Genuine blue pigment, a molecule that absorbs all wavelengths of visible light except blue and reflects that blue back, is extraordinarily difficult for plants to produce. Delphinidin, the closest naturally occurring blue pigment, tends toward purple in most cellular environments. In 2019, researchers in Japan finally created a true blue chrysanthemum by introducing a gene from the butterfly pea flower, Clitoria ternatea, which shifted the delphinidin's molecular structure just enough to push it into the blue range. It took over 20 years of genetic research. The result was a chrysanthemum that was genuinely, unambiguously blue, the first of its kind in horticultural history. The color that human cultures have always associated with tranquility, with the sky, with water, is the one color that flowers find almost impossible to make. Every part of the oleander flower can kill you, and so can its smoke. Nerium oleander is one of the most toxic ornamental plants in the world. Every tissue of the plant, including the flowers, leaves, bark, roots, and seeds, contains cardiac glycosides, compounds that interfere with the electrical signaling of the heart. Ingestion can cause nausea, vomiting, cardiac arrhythmia, and death. But the danger extends beyond eating it. Historical accounts describe soldiers who died after roasting meat on oleander sticks, poisoned by the smoke and the compounds that leached into the food through the wood. Honey produced by bees that forage on oleander flowers, sometimes called mad honey, contains enough toxin to cause cardiac symptoms in humans. Despite all of this, oleander is one of the most widely planted ornamental shrubs in warm climates around the world. It lines motorways in California, decorates resort gardens in the Mediterranean, and fills public parks in Australia. It thrives in heat, tolerates drought, blooms prolifically, and is beautiful. It is also, from root to petal, lethal. The beauty is genuine. So is the danger. They share the same stem. The agave flower blooms once and then the entire plant dies, sometimes after waiting 80 years. The century plant, Agave americana, does not actually take a century to bloom, but it can take anywhere from 10 to 80 years, depending on the species and the growing conditions. During all of those decades, the plant is doing nothing visible. It sits as a rosette of thick, fleshy, spine-tipped leaves, growing slowly, storing energy in its tissues, accumulating the reserves it will need for a single, enormous act of reproduction. When the moment finally arrives, the agave sends up a flowering stalk that can reach 9 meters tall, roughly the height of a 3-story building. The stalk erupts from the center of the rosette and grows with extraordinary speed, sometimes several centimeters per day. At its top, hundreds of flowers open in dense clusters, attracting bats, birds, and insects in enormous numbers. Then, once pollination is complete and the seeds have been set, the entire parent plant dies. Every leaf, every root, every cell that spent decades preparing for this moment expires. The strategy is called semelparity, one reproductive event, then death. The agave bets everything on a single bloom. The scent of a rose is composed of over 400 different chemical compounds, and no one has ever managed to perfectly replicate it. Rose fragrance is one of the most chemically complex scents in nature. Geraniol provides the sweet, floral top note. Citronellol adds freshness. Nerol contributes softness. Damascenone, present in extraordinarily low concentrations, provides the deep, rich, unmistakably rosy heart of the scent. And behind these headline molecules are hundreds of others, trace compounds present in parts per billion, each one subtly shaping the overall impression. The ratio of these compounds varies by species, by time of day, by temperature, and even by the age of the individual bloom. A rose smells different at dawn than it does at noon. A damask rose smells different from a tea rose, which smells different from a wild dog rose. The perfume industry has pursued a perfect synthetic rose for over a century. Modern rose accords are impressively close, but no synthetic formulation has ever reproduced the scent of a living rose with absolute fidelity. The chemistry is too complex, too variable, too alive. The real thing remains, after all the analysis and all the engineering, inimitable. Carnivorous sundews grow their flowers on tall stalks to separate the killing floor from the maternity ward. Drosera species, the sundews, are small, ground-hugging plants whose leaves are covered in the sticky glandular hairs that trap, hold, and slowly digest insects. The leaves glisten with droplets of mucilage that look, to a passing fly, like dewdrops. The fly lands, becomes stuck, and is slowly dissolved by enzymes secreted from the leaf surface. The plant absorbs the nutrients. But sundews also need pollinators to reproduce. Insects that would be useful as mates must not become meals. The plant's solution is the same as the pitcher plants, but achieved on a smaller scale. Sundews produce their flowers on stalks that extend far above the deadly rosette of leaves, creating a vertical buffer zone between the trap and the bloom. A bee visiting the flower at the top of the stalk can do so safely. A fly landing on a leaf at the base cannot. The sundew has built its entire body plan around a single architectural principle: keep the pollinators above, keep the food below, and never let the two zones overlap. The tulip is not Dutch. It never was. Wild tulips originated in the mountains of Central Asia, in the region that is now Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. They grew at altitude in rocky soils and bloomed in brief, brilliant bursts during the mountain spring. They were first cultivated not in the Netherlands but in the Ottoman Empire, where they became objects of intense horticultural interest. The Ottoman court maintained vast tulip gardens, and the flower became a symbol of paradise and divine perfection in Islamic art. The word tulip likely derives from the Turkish tulbend, meaning turban, describing the shape of the bloom. Tulips arrived in Europe in the 16th century through diplomatic channels sent to the Viennese court by the Ottoman ambassador. From Vienna, they spread to the Low Countries, where the Dutch, with their advanced horticultural infrastructure and their hunger for novelty, turned the tulip into a global phenomenon. But the flower that crashed the Amsterdam stock market was a Central Asian mountain wildflower. It had been beautiful for millennia before anyone in Europe ever saw one. Hemlock flowers killed one of the greatest philosophers who ever lived. In 399 BC, the Athenian court found Socrates guilty of impiety and corrupting the youth, and sentenced him to death by self-administered poison. The poison was a preparation of Conium maculatum, poison hemlock, a plant that produces small, delicate white flowers arranged in flat-topped clusters called umbels. It looks remarkably, dangerously similar to several edible plants, including Queen Anne's lace, wild carrot, and cow parsley. This resemblance makes accidental poisoning disturbingly common even in the modern world. The toxic compound, conine, is an alkaloid that causes ascending paralysis. It begins in the feet and legs, moves upward through the body, and eventually reaches the respiratory muscles. Plato's account of Socrates' death describes exactly this progression. The philosopher remained conscious and conversational as the paralysis climbed, discussing the nature of the soul with his students until it reached his chest and he could no longer breathe. The flowers that produced the poison are still growing in hedgerows and roadside ditches across Europe today. Small and white, and easy to mistake for something harmless. The petals of the Himalayan blue poppy are so thin that sunlight passes through them. Mechanopsis betonifolia grows at altitudes above 3,000 meters in the mountains of Tibet, Yunnan, and Bhutan. Its flowers are a shade of blue so vivid and so unusual that it has obsessed gardeners and plant collectors since the species was first described by Western botanists in the early 20th century. The petals are extraordinarily delicate, thin enough to be translucent. When the sun shines through them, they glow with an ethereal, almost luminous quality that photographs rarely capture. The blue is produced by a combination of anthocyanin pigments and the specific cellular structure of the petal, which scatters light in a way that intensifies the color. Outside its native range, the Himalayan blue poppy is notoriously difficult to grow. It requires cool, moist conditions, acidic soil, and temperatures that rarely exceed 20 degrees Celsius. Most attempts to cultivate it in lowland gardens fail. It is a flower that belongs to the high places, to thin air and cold mist, and alpine meadows that most people will never visit. And it rewards the few who see it in its native habitat, with a color that looks like it was borrowed from the sky. Flowers and butterflies evolved together, each one shaping the other across millions of years. The earliest butterfly fossils appear in the geological record at roughly the same time as the great radiation of flowering plants during the late Cretaceous period. This is not a coincidence. As flowers diversified, producing deeper tubes and more complex structures to protect their nectar, butterflies evolved longer proboscises to reach it. As butterflies became more efficient pollinators, flowers evolved brighter colors and more elaborate petal arrangements to attract them. The process is called co-evolution, and it has been running continuously for at least 80 million years. Every butterfly tongue is a key shaped by a specific lock. Every flower tube is a lock shaped by a specific key. The two groups have been refining each other's design in an arms race of beauty and access that has no endpoint and no winner. It simply continues generation after generation, each one a little more precise than the last. The night-blooming cereus opens only once a year, for a single night. Selenitarius grandiflorus, the queen of the night, produces a large, white, intensely fragrant flower that begins to open after sunset and wilts before dawn. The bloom lasts roughly 6 to 8 hours. If it is not pollinated by a moth or a bat during that window, it never reopens. The flower simply collapses, and the plant waits another year before trying again. In the deserts of the American Southwest and across parts of Central America, communities hold serious watching parties, gathering at dusk around a plant that has been building its single bud for weeks, waiting for the moment it begins to unfurl. The fragrance is powerful, a sweet, vanilla-like scent designed to carry through cool night air and reach pollinators from a considerable distance. By morning, the flower is gone. A year of preparation for a few hours of existence. It is one of the most fleeting spectacles in the botanical world, and the people who witness it tend to remember it for the rest of their lives. The iris flower has been used in perfumery for over 3,000 years, but the scent takes 5 years to develop. Orris root, the dried rhizome of Iris germanica and related species, is one of the oldest and most expensive raw materials in the fragrance industry. But when the rhizome is first harvested, it has almost no scent at all. The characteristic fragrance, a soft, powdery, violet-like aroma considered one of the most refined in perfumery, develops only after the root has been dried and aged for 3 to 5 years. During this time, chemical reactions within the root tissue slowly convert fatty acids into ions, the volatile compounds responsible for the orris scent. The yield is extraordinarily low. A ton of dried iris root produces roughly 2 kilograms of orris butter, the concentrated aromatic extract. The cost of orris absolute can exceed $50,000 per kilogram, making it one of the most expensive natural fragrance materials on Earth. a scent that takes 5 years to appear, extracted from a flower that has been prized since the pharaohs. Patience has never smelled so expensive. Flowers produce sounds that humans cannot hear, and stressed plants are louder. In 2023, researchers at Tel Aviv University published a landmark study demonstrating that tomato and tobacco plants emit ultrasonic clicking sounds at frequencies between 20 and 100 kilohertz, far above the range of human hearing. The sounds increased dramatically when the plants were dehydrated or physically damaged. A well-watered plant was relatively quiet. A drought-stressed plant produced dozens of clicks per hour. The researchers suggested that these airborne sounds could potentially be detected by nearby insects, mammals, or even other plants, though the question of who is listening remains open. The study did not focus exclusively on flowers, but the floral structures were among the tissues that produced emissions. The implication is striking. The garden is not silent. It is full of sound, broadcast at frequencies we were never equipped to hear. A conversation happening just above the threshold of human perception. The giant Amazon water lily pad can support the weight of a small child. Victoria amazonica produces circular leaves that can exceed 3 meters in diameter, making them the largest floating leaves of any plant on Earth. The secret to their strength lies on the underside. A network of thick, radiating ribs connected by smaller cross braces creates a structure that distributes weight evenly across the entire surface, like the framework of a bridge. The rims of the pads turn upward, forming a shallow wall that prevents water from washing over the top. A mature pad resting on the still water can support roughly 45 kilograms without sinking. Victorian naturalists famously demonstrated this by placing children on the pads for photographs, the child standing on a board laid across the surface to spread the load, the leaf holding steady beneath. The engineering is so effective that it inspired not only the Crystal Palace, but also modern developments in lightweight structural design. A leaf floating on a river in the Amazon basin solved problems of load distribution that human engineers are still studying. A wildflower meadow supports 50 times more pollinators than a mown lawn. In 2019, researchers in the United Kingdom measured pollinator activity across different types of green space and found that converting a single hectare of regularly mown grass to wildflower meadow increased pollinator visits by roughly 5,000%. The reason is not simply more flowers, it is more diversity of flowers. A monoculture lawn offers almost nothing to pollinators. A wildflower meadow offers dozens of species blooming at different times, providing nectar and pollen continuously from early spring to late autumn. The variety of flower shapes and sizes supports a wider range of insect species, from long-tongued bumblebees to tiny solitary bees to hoverflies and beetles. The study found that the diversity of nectar sources mattered more than the sheer quantity of blooms. A meadow with 30 species outperformed a field planted with a single species, even if the single species field contained more individual flowers. The lesson is simple. Complexity feeds life. A lawn is a desert with a good haircut. The phrase, "say it with flowers," is not an ancient tradition. It is a marketing slogan from 1917. The Society of American Florists, the trade organization representing the American flower industry, coined the phrase as part of a commercial advertising campaign designed to increase flower sales. The slogan was so effective and so widely adopted that within a generation, it had become embedded in popular culture as though it had always existed. Most people who use the phrase today assume it carries the weight of centuries of tradition. It does not. It carries the weight of a very good advertising department. The campaign worked because it articulated something that people already felt but had not expressed in those specific words. The flowers were already meaningful. The slogan simply gave the meaning a catchphrase. It is a reminder that some of the traditions we consider timeless were, in fact, invented within living memory and sold to us by people who had flowers to move. Some cacti produce flowers larger than dinner plates that last only a single night. Epiphylla moxypetalum, the Dutchman's pipe cactus, produces enormous white blooms that can reach 30 centimeters across, dramatically outsizing the thin, flat, leaf-like stems they emerge from. The flowers open after dark, releasing a powerful, sweet fragrance into the night air, and they close and wilt by sunrise. The entire display lasts roughly 8 hours. The plant invests enormous energy into producing each bloom, building the bud over weeks before the single night of opening. Pollination must occur during those hours or not at all. The strategy is high risk and high reward, concentrating all reproductive effort into a brief, spectacular window rather than spreading it across a long, blooming season. If you have one growing on your balcony and you miss the night it opens, you may not see it bloom again for months. The flower does not wait for you. It opens when it is ready, in the dark, whether anyone is watching or not. Echinacea was the most widely used medicinal plant among Native American nations. At least 14 distinct indigenous nations across the Great Plains and eastern woodlands used Echinacea, the purple coneflower, for a range of medicinal purposes. The Lakota used it for pain and snakebite. The Cheyenne used it for sore throats and gums. The Comanche used it for toothache. The Pawnee used it as a treatment for headache. Each nation developed its own preparation methods and applications independently, suggesting that the plant's medicinal properties were discovered multiple times across a wide geographic range. Modern research has identified several immunologically active compounds in Echinacea, including alkamides and polysaccharides that appear to modulate immune cell activity. The clinical evidence for its effectiveness in preventing or shortening colds remains mixed, but the breadth of its traditional use across so many independent cultures points to a plant that reliably did something that people found worth repeating. Generation after generation, long before anyone could explain why. The smell of freshly cut grass is a chemical distress signal. When a lawnmower blade slices through a grass leaf, the damaged cells release a burst of volatile organic compounds called greenleaf volatiles. These compounds, primarily a group of 6 carbon molecules, including hexanyl and hexanyl acetate, are produced within seconds of the tissue being torn. They serve multiple functions. They seal the wound site, inhibiting bacterial and fungal infection. They attract parasitic wasps, insects that prey on the herbivores that would normally be causing the damage, and they may alert neighboring plants to prepare their own chemical defenses. The fresh, green, summery scent that drifts across a garden on a Saturday afternoon is, in biochemical terms, a cry for help. The grass is broadcasting an alarm signal to every organism within range, calling in air support and warning its neighbors that something with blades is moving through the area. You find the smell pleasant. The grass is screaming. Opium has been extracted from poppy flowers for at least 5,000 years. Sumerian clay tablets dating to approximately 3,400 BC refer to the opium poppy as Hul-Gil, the joy plant. The Sumerians harvested the milky latex that seeps from scored seed capsules and used it for its pain, relieving and euphoric properties. The practice spread to the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, and eventually to every civilization connected by trade. The same species, Papaver somniferum, remains the source of morphine, codeine, and their derivatives today. Morphine was first isolated in 1804 by the German pharmacist Friedrich Seerturner, who named it after Morpheus, the Greek god of dreams. It transformed surgery, made modern anesthesia possible, and remains on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines. It also fueled the Opium Wars, devastated communities through addiction, and gave rise to heroin, synthesized from morphine in 1874. A single flower species, beautiful, fragile, and blowing gently in the wind, has shaped more human history, caused more suffering, and relieved more pain than any other plant on Earth. Dahlias were originally grown as a food crop, not an ornamental flower. When Spanish explorers brought dahlias from Mexico to Europe in the late 18th century, the primary interest was in the tuberous roots, which the Aztecs had eaten for centuries. The flowers of the wild species were considered small, single-petaled, and unremarkable. European botanists attempted to cultivate the dahlia as a vegetable, growing it alongside potatoes and turnips. The tubers, however, did not suit European palates. They were described as bland, watery, and faintly unpleasant. The flower, meanwhile, began to attract attention from horticulturists who noticed that dahlias hybridized easily and produced dramatic variation in bloom shape and color. Within a few decades, the dahlia had been transformed through selective breeding from a modest food plant into one of the most spectacular ornamental flowers in the garden. The tubers were forgotten. The blooms became the point, a vegetable that failed its audition and got recast as a flower. Heather was used for mattresses, roofing, and ale long before anyone planted it in a garden. In the Scottish Highlands and across Scandinavia, heather was one of the most versatile wild plants in daily life. Dried heather was bundled into mattresses and bedding. Its woody stems were woven into roofing thatch. Its flowers were brewed into heather ale, one of the oldest known fermented beverages in the British Isles, predating the widespread use of hops in beer by thousands of years. A traditional recipe involves boiling the flowering tips with malt and fermenting the liquid with wild yeast. The result is a light, slightly floral ale that has been revived by modern craft breweries. In legend, the recipe for heather ale was a secret of the Picts, the ancient people of northern Scotland, who supposedly died rather than reveal it to their enemies. Whether the story is historically accurate is debatable. What is not debatable is that people have been making alcohol from flowers for a very long time, and heather was one of the first. Some flowers can grow through asphalt. A seed germinating in a crack in a road or pavement can exert enough force through cell turgor pressure and root expansion to split tarmac and lift paving stones. The mechanism is not brute strength. It is persistent, slow, hydraulic pressure applied over days and weeks. Each cell in the growing root tip absorbs water and swells, pressing outward with a force that individually is tiny but cumulatively is enough to fracture concrete. Japanese knotweed, Fallopoia japonica, is the most infamous example. Its tiny, cream-colored flowers belie a root system so aggressive that it can penetrate tarmac, crack building foundations, damage drainage systems, and undermine retaining walls. The plant has caused billions of dollars in structural damage worldwide and is classified as an invasive species in most countries where it has been introduced. Mortgage lenders in the United Kingdom have been known to refuse loans on properties where knotweed is present. A flowering plant growing quietly in a garden can make a house unmortgageable. The flowers are small and white and look like nothing at all. The roots beneath them are demolishing the foundations. There are more species of orchid on Earth than species of birds and mammals combined. The Orchidaceae family contains over 28,000 described species, making it one of the 2 largest families of flowering plants. To put that number in perspective, there are roughly 10,000 species of bird and roughly 6,400 species of mammal. Orchids outnumber both groups put together by a wide margin. They grow on every continent except Antarctica. They live in deserts, in swamps, in cloud forests, on tree branches, on rock faces, and underground. New species are still being described every year, often from remote tropical forests where botanical surveys remain incomplete. The range of orchid form is staggering, from flowers the size of a coin to sprays longer than a person's arm, from blossoms that last months to blooms that open for a single morning. No plant family on Earth has diversified into more species, occupied more habitats, or evolved more strategies for survival. The orchid is not a niche organism. It is one of the most successful experiments in the history of life. Ancient Britons painted themselves blue for battle using dye from a flower. Woad, Isatis tinctoria, is a flowering plant native to the steppe regions of Central Asia that was cultivated across Europe for its leaves, which yield a blue dye chemically identical to indigo. When Julius Caesar invaded Britain in 55 BC, he described the native warriors as painting their bodies with a blue substance that gave them a terrifying appearance in battle. The dye was extracted from woad through a laborious process of crushing the leaves, forming them into balls, fermenting them for weeks, and then dissolving the resulting paste in a vat of alkaline liquid. The blue pigment was deep, vivid, and resistant to washing. Woad remained the primary source of blue dye in Europe for over 1,000 years, until it was replaced by imported indigo from tropical plants in the 17th century. The small, yellow, 4-petaled flowers of the woad plant are modest and easy to overlook, but the dye locked inside its leaves painted the faces of warriors, coloured the robes of medieval kings, and tinted the fabrics of an entire continent for millennia. The largest flower garden in the world grows in the middle of a desert. Dubai Miracle Garden, opened in 2013, covers over 72,000 square meters of sculpted landscape in the Arabian desert, containing more than 150 million flowers arranged in elaborate 3-dimensional structures. There are flower-covered arches, castles, animal sculptures, and a full-scale replica of an Airbus A380 aircraft, covered entirely in living blooms. The entire garden is sustained by a drip irrigation system fed with recycled grey water from the city, using roughly 757,000 litres per day. The garden operates only during the cooler months, from November to May, closing during the brutal desert summer, when temperatures exceed 50 degrees Celsius. It is a monument to horticultural engineering, a proof of concept that flowers can be grown almost anywhere if enough ingenuity and water are applied. And it is a reminder that the human desire to surround ourselves with flowers is strong enough to build a garden in one of the least hospitable landscapes on the planet. Pollen is one of the most indestructible biological substances ever produced. The outer wall of a pollen grain is made of sporopollenin, a polymer so chemically resistant that it survives conditions that would destroy virtually any other organic material. Pollen grains have been recovered from rocks over 500 million years old, their structure intact, their species still identifiable under a microscope. Sporopollenin resists acids, bases, extreme heat, and prolonged burial. It does not rot, it does not dissolve, it endures. This extraordinary durability has made pollen analysis, called palynology, one of the most powerful tools in forensic science, archaeology, and climate research. Forensic investigators use pollen found on clothing, shoes, and vehicles to link suspects to specific locations. Archaeologists use pollen cores drilled from lake beds and peat bogs to reconstruct the vegetation of ancient landscapes. Climate scientists use pollen records to track how ecosystems have shifted over hundreds of thousands of years. A grain of dust released from a flower and carried on the wind can outlast the civilization that watched it fall. The red parts of a poinsettia are not flowers. They are leaves that changed color because the plant measured the length of the night. The bright red structures that make poinsettias a symbol of Christmas are modified leaves called bracts. The actual flowers are the small, yellow, bead-like clusters at the center, which most people never notice. The bracts change color in response to photoperiodism, the measurement of day length. Specifically, the poinsettia requires at least 14 hours of uninterrupted darkness per day for several weeks before the bracts will turn red. Even a brief exposure to artificial light during the dark period can disrupt the process and prevent the color change entirely. The plant is not responding to temperature or to cold. It is responding to the length of the night, counting the hours of darkness with a molecular clock inside its cells, and changing color only when the nights are long enough to confirm that the season is right. The Christmas flower is, in effect, an astronomer, measuring the tilt of the Earth through the duration of its own darkness. Flowers are the primary ingredient in some of the world's most celebrated drinks. Elderflower cordial, made by steeping the blossoms of Sambucus nigra in sugar syrup, is one of the defining flavors of the English summer. Saint-Germain, the French liqueur, is made from elderflower harvested once a year in the foothills of the Alps. Crème de violette, a delicate purple spirit, is distilled from violet petals and has been produced since at least the 19th century. Rose water, distilled from damask rose petals, is a cornerstone of Persian, Turkish, and Indian cuisine and appears in drinks from lassi to sharbat. Hibiscus flowers are steeped to make agua de Jamaica across Latin America, carcade in Egypt, and bissap in West Africa. Chamomile tea, jasmine tea, chrysanthemum tea, lavender lemonade, the list extends across every culture that has access to flowers and a desire to drink something beautiful. We do not just look at flowers, we drink them. We have been drinking them for as long as we have been making drinks. Carl Linnaeus organized the entire plant kingdom by counting the sexual parts of flowers, and it scandalized Europe. In 1735, the Swedish naturalist published Systema Naturae, a classification system that grouped plants primarily by the number and arrangement of their stamens and pistils, the male and female reproductive organs of the flower. He described stamens as husbands and pistils as wives, and he grouped plants into classes with names that translated to things like 20 males in the same marriage and males and females in different houses. The system was revolutionary. It provided a consistent, universal method for classifying plants that could be used by any botanist anywhere in the world. But the sexual language offended many of his contemporaries. The botanist Johann Siegesbeck called the system loathsome harlotry and argued that God would never have permitted such licentious arrangements in the plant kingdom. Linnaeus responded by naming a small, unpleasant weed Siegesbeckia. The weed still bears the name. The classification system became the foundation of modern botanical taxonomy. And the scandal, like most scandals involving flowers, eventually faded into something that seems rather charming in retrospect. Pressed flowers have been found in books over 400 years old, their colors still visible. The practice of pressing flowers between the pages of books, preserving them flat and dry for study or sentiment, dates to at least the 16th century. Herbarium specimens from the 15 and 1600s, held in university collections across Europe, still retain identifiable petal structures, leaf shapes, and traces of original pigment. The oldest known pressed flower specimen, dating to approximately 1600, is held in a collection in Bologna, Italy. Pressing works because the paper absorbs moisture from the plant tissue while the weight of the book keeps the specimen flat, preventing the curling and distortion that would occur in open air. The result is a two-dimensional record of a three-dimensional organism, fragile but remarkably long-lasting. Some of these centuries-old specimens have been used by modern botanists to identify species that have since gone extinct. A flower pressed into a book by a Renaissance scholar, forgotten for 400 years, can still teach us something about a world that no longer exists. The Japanese art of flower arranging is a 600-year-old meditative discipline governed by strict philosophical principles. Ikebana, which translates roughly as making flowers alive, is not decoration. It is a practice rooted in Buddhist philosophy that treats the arrangement of flowers as a form of meditation and spiritual expression. It originated in the 15th century as a ritual offering in Buddhist temples and evolved over the following centuries into a refined art form with distinct schools, each teaching specific techniques and aesthetic principles. The three main elements of a traditional ikebana arrangement represent heaven, earth, and humanity, and their relative heights, angles, and positions follow precise rules that the practitioner studies for years. Negative space, the empty areas within the arrangement, is considered as important as the stems and blooms themselves. Unlike Western flower arranging, which tends to emphasize abundance and symmetry, Ikebana values asymmetry, restraint, and the beauty of a single branch, or a solitary bloom placed with absolute intention. It is a practice that asks you to look at a flower not as one of many, but as itself, alone, complete, and worthy of your full attention. Meadowsweet flowers gave aspirin its name and changed the course of modern medicine. The salicylic acid found in meadowsweet, Filipendula ulmaria, had been used as a folk remedy for pain and fever for centuries. But salicylic acid in its natural form irritates the stomach, making it difficult to use as a regular medicine. In 1897, a chemist at the biopharmaceutical company named Felix Hoffmann synthesized a modified version, acetylsalicylic acid, that retained the pain-relieving properties while reducing the gastric side effects. Bayer named the new drug aspirin. The A came from acetyl. The spirin came from spirea, the old botanical name for the meadowsweet genus. Aspirin became one of the most widely used drugs in human history. It relieves pain, reduces fever, decreases inflammation, and thins the blood, making it a cornerstone of cardiovascular prevention. Billions of tablets are consumed every year, and the name on every one of them traces back to a wild flower with clusters of small, creamy white blossoms that grows in damp meadows across Europe. A flower that most people walk past without a second glance gave its name to a medicine that has saved more lives than almost any other drug ever made. Every flower you have ever been given was, in the strictest biological sense, a reproductive organ. A bouquet sitting on your kitchen table is a collection of structures that evolved over 130 million years for a single purpose: to facilitate the transfer of genetic material from one organism to another. The petals exist to attract pollinators. The colors exist to be seen. The scents exist to be followed. The nectar exists to be consumed. Every element of every flower, from the shape of its corolla to the timing of its bloom, is a strategy for reproduction, refined across geological time by the relentless pressures of natural selection. That we find them beautiful is, from the flower's perspective, entirely the point. Beauty is the mechanism. It is the tool the flower uses to manipulate the behavior of other organisms: bees, birds, bats, moths, beetles, and occasionally humans, into doing its bidding. The fact that a bouquet of roses makes you feel something, that it communicates love or sympathy or celebration, is built on a foundation that the flower laid long before humans existed. We did not invent the emotional power of flowers. We fell for it, and we have been falling for it, willingly, gratefully, for 15,000 years. And that is where we will leave it tonight. 100 facts about flowers. From a corpse-scented giant that heats itself like a furnace, to a spice worth more than gold. From a tulip that crashed an economy, to a poppy that bloomed in the trenches of war. From orchids that deceive wasps into mating with their petals, to a lotus that cleans itself with nothing but rain. From a seed that waited 50 years for a single storm, to a cherry blossom that taught an entire civilization to love what does not last. You do not need to remember any of it. What stays with you will stay on its own, the way a scent stays in a room long after the flowers have been taken away. Something about the color, something about the patience, something about the way a living thing can be so small and so quiet and still reshape the world around it, one petal at a time. For now, there is nothing left to learn, nothing to remember, nothing to do. Just rest. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts soften. Let the quiet chemistry of flowers, the gentlest force in the natural world, carry you wherever it wants to go. Thank you for spending this time with us. Sleep well. Good night.